All right, so here we are. We're in the last stage. So as you see, what we've done is we've dropped the strand, right? And we introduced the new strand. Let me get this tightened up a little bit here. We introduced the new strand. Now, I plaited up until the new strand, the strand that was added, is now the next strand to be passed, and that's when you want to do it, right? And you see this is the new strand that I added. It's right in alignment with the rest of the strands, just like just like this there. So as I plait that, just before I plait it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull. And I made sure that like I said, you would want to usually you would want to plait for you would want this to be further up here to give it nice and good snug before you do this, but I left it loose so that I could do this right here and show you. So now I'm just going to pull it right through until that tag drops into the core, just like that. And then you would press it down, pull everything nice and tight, and then the only difference is now when you work with this strand, the first two passes that you work with this strand, you obviously don't want to pull too ridiculously tight. But now you have successfully added a new strand. When you plait with it, you're not going to know, and as you see here, when we follow behind, it's going to follow the same sequence. It's going to follow right underneath, right where everything needs to be. Like, again, don't mind the my messy plaiting because I'm just trying to show you one-handed, but that's pretty much it. And so the only reason why I'm pointing this out to you and is because, like I said, man, leather is really, 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 really tough. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to have strand breaks. Eventually you're going to be tugging and you're going to snap a strand. And with the first time that happened for me, I was like, oh my gosh, And Bernie, when Bernie does it, where'd that strand go? When Bernie does it, he kind of just takes it and puts it up under here and starts going. But the problem is that it gets really messy back there. You can actually see it. And I learned that as I was doing it. I was like, man, that looks terrible. When I broke my first couple of strands. And there's a couple of whips that I've done where I've broken like 2 or 3 strands in the overlay, and that's not even ideal. Like when you break a strand, in the core or in the bellies or something like that, you're like, no big deal. But when you break it in the overlay, I mean, having that smooth, seamless overlay is a big stinking deal. And so, just doing this thing like what Bernie did, where he tucks it back there and then continues plaiting around it. Like, I mean, yeah, that gets it in there, but unless you are 100% back here, and it's difficult to see back there, there's a good chance that it's going to get all messy. Whereas, as you can see the way that I do it, it's right in front of your face. You can watch how everything's going, and it works out perfectly. And then, not only does this help you in case you break strands, but this also does give you the opportunity to reintroduce new strands. And I will say, think about this method when you get somebody who at some point in time says, hey, I want a 30-foot whip. You're not going to get 30 feet out of one hide or 2 hides or 3 hides. You're not going to get that, You're not going to get, at some point in time, in order to cut enough strands, you're going to need to cut like you would for a 10-foot, and then you're going to need to add strands to continue the length going down. And it's a very valid thing. It does work. Once you add them, and you add them the correct way, and you add them nice and secure, you will find that it's seamless and that it does not change the integrity of the structure of the whip. It's not going to fall apart unless you just do it wrong. I did early on, I did at one point in time give it a shot once, and I did do it wrong, where instead of going straight in like this, I actually followed the strand that I was going to be replacing, and it ended up messing up. I ended up having to fix it and redo that section of the whip because it didn't turn out well. But if you do it this way, it works out well. So I hope that helps. That strand that you said that you had with your splitter, I've done that 100 times. Just because you've cut a strand in half on accident on your resizer or on your splitter doesn't mean that the strand is null and void and can't be used. You can still use it as the strand, but just know that, put it in there exactly as you would, but know that you're going to have to reintroduce that strand somewhere. And once you start doing it and you get in the habit of doing it, or you have your first several strand breaks, you'll be like, oh, this is cool, I can do this. And then before you know it, like I said, you'll start introducing it into your whip making overall. You'll start doing fade patterns or designs, or you'll do longer whips. And you'll be able to introduce strands or something like that. Or there's the accident. I've had it happen a couple of times to me already where I miscalculated my strand length and ended up maybe a foot short in my overall strand length, and I needed to add strands in order to compensate for that and have a long enough whip that the customer ordered. And it turned out great. It turned out beautiful. It was seamless, no issues. It's not falling apart. It's not doing anything. It's good and tight when you use that method. So yeah, there's that tidbit of info, and I hope that helps you in the future, man. All right.